Hi, this is Craig, and welcome to another episode of Cruising Off Duty. This is going to be another Mavic tutorial. It's going to be about waypoints, and specifically on my channel, you're going to find everything Mavic tutorial is also going to be about doing it in the cold. The day you're about to see an episode, I shot about a week ago in the parking of the Canadian Tire Center, which is where the Senators play hockey. Big open parking lot, no wind protection at all. It was about minus 11, but it was windy, so it was probably about minus 14. Very cold. And I wanted to test this 7-inch Android tablet that I got, and everybody's been asking me, how's it worked out, how's it worked out? I've been working so much, I haven't had a chance to really test it properly, especially for a long flight. This is the tablet. It's made by Npol. It's a fine tablet if you just want to watch movies or do something or do internet stuff. It is not that good for being a controller. See, I'd already used this Android tablet, as you saw in a previous episode, this 10-inch tablet connected to my controller, and the feed from the DJI Go app was fine. Figured the 7-inch tablet would be perfect because it's also an Android tablet, but it's smaller and it fits in my controller. Well, you get what you pay for. It's not fast enough to keep up with the HD feed, so the video feed, although DJI Go app seems to work, all the diagnostics works fine, the video feed is jittery, choppy. I was worried when I saw that on the screen that it was actually the Mavic that was doing that, but it wasn't, thank God. So I got some points I wanted to tell you so that when you see the footage, you understand all the things I learned from this episode. The first thing is, which isn't not really caught on the episode, I took the Mavic out of my car way too early, put it on the back of my car, set up my tripod, did all my prep to get ready to film. So this thing sat outside in the minus 13 for probably almost 10 minutes. Don't do that. When I did that and I started it up, it gave me all sorts of weird error messages. The battery lights were flashing weird, everything was strange. Turned it off, turned it on, back, still outside, didn't make a difference. Got into my nice warm car, turned it off, sat for a few minutes till it warmed up, then powered it on, then it was fine. So the trick is, and this doesn't matter, this episode's about waypoints, but it doesn't matter what you're planning to do with your Mavic. Don't fly it in the cold if you've been letting it sit in the cold for a while, because there's a good chance you're going to have some sort of errors come up on your controller. And one of the things said, you know, there's an error, and if you try and hit return to home, it won't work. You'll have to manually fly back. It was just a weird bunch of error messages. So make sure your Mavic and all the batteries that go along with it are nice and warm until you're ready to fly. Don't leave it out in the exposed elements for a long time while you set up like I did. The 7-inch tablet does continue to work. The cold issue, like with my iPhone, which is what I'd like to be using, this thing dies really, really fast if it's left in the cold. But I love it, but not in the cold. So when I found out this worked in the cold, but it doesn't fit in the controller, that's why I got this one. This one flew the whole battery that on this episode. I was out there for at least 20 minutes flying and beyond, because I'm talking after I've landed and this thing's still on. This thing never complained about it running out of battery. So I think it was getting a little bit of juice from the controller, but the controller also wasn't dying quickly, so it's a good combo that way. If this thing would only keep up with the HD feed from the Mavic and be a nice smooth image, I would use this all the time. So I either have to get an attachment to put in this that will hold a full-size tablet like my iPad or that 10-inch Android. I'm starting to learn that auto white balance is not good, especially in cold. I think the sensors slow down in the cold. You'll notice if you watch the footage that even when the drone's barely moving or panning slowly, it's having trouble deciding if it should be brighter, if it should be darker. So it gets brighter, and then it decides, no, it's too bright, and it gets darker. And the hues change. It goes from a kind of a more bluish hue to a more yellowy hue. It's a mess. It's all over the map. I think what I should have done is just set everything in manual, pick the ISO, pick the white balance, told it it's overcast or whatever, and gone. And then it would have stayed at one exposure the entire flight. It didn't matter in this case because this wasn't a cinematic episode, but for future reference, for anybody who's trying to film something, turn the auto white balance off, because Mavic is constantly guessing at what you're pointing at. If you're pointing at snow, it'll darken everything down, and then you point at something that's darker and all of a sudden everything gets bright. It's disconcerting to watch. So I don't need to hear in the comments how it's crappy quality with the auto white balance. Yeah, I realize that. The latest firmware seemed to help the Mavic. The gimbal is the issue. Mavic, when it's running, there's a heat sink under here. These little fins under here are a heat sink, and you'll feel it gets hot as it's flying or after it's been flying for a while, and that heat kind of emanates up into the battery. So once you get this thing out of your nice warm car, set it up and start flying, you'll not have an issue with it getting too cold, at least the Mavic itself and the battery. The gimbal hangs out the front, and since there's an air intake right behind it, some fins or vents right behind it, it's sucking in cold air right past the gimbal. And so the gimbal's probably getting frozen. But this new firmware update did help. I noticed once I was in the Waypoints and the thing was flying around smoothly on its own, I didn't have any jello effect. Didn't notice too many really glaring glitches. It seemed a lot better than it was the last time I flew. The one thing I did notice though is when I was flying from waypoint to waypoint, you'll definitely see it because I show my finger on the joystick fully as fast as I can go. So the Mavic's flying like this as fast as it can go. And then I just sort of drop my thumb off the joystick. Half of it is my fingers are freezing and I'm not being too gentle with it. So it's either full throttle or no throttle. And when it does that, I watch the Mavic go like this to try and stop in place. And when it does that, the gimbal being pretty much frozen, and a lot of the gimbal being really, it's hanging by a bunch of rubber strands, rubber bands, they get stiff in the cold. So they don't have the ability to quite compensate with the Mavic going from full throttle to full stop. Every time I do that, you'll see in the footage, the image shudders when I first let my finger off the joystick. Mavic's helped with the firmware update, but they can't get around the fact that if it's freezing cold out, the gimbal can't quite compensate for the movement of the Mavic quick enough. And enjoy the episode of the DJI Go Waypoint. Hello, this is Craig. Welcome to another episode of Cruising Off Duty. I've been wanting to get you some more Mavic tutorial videos, but I've been working a ton. I think I've worked 6 out of the last 7 days, and we work like 11-hour shifts. And other than that, when I do have a day off, it's been snowing or sleeting or something, or it's crazy windy. It was crazy windy earlier today, and the wind's died a little bit, but it's still pretty cold. Probably the minute I'm behind the camera, I'm gonna put my hoodie up because my ears are freezing. It's minus 11 out right now, and it's getting colder. It's almost 4 o'clock, so we don't have much light left. What I want to do in this episode is I just want to do something about waypoints, and then I'll explain that I have a Litchi app that does waypoints better than the DJI Go app, and if you can afford to buy the app, it's probably a good idea. It's got some features that the basic DJI Go app doesn't have, but you don't need it. So depends if you want to spend the money. I think I spent about $40 Canadian for this Litchi app, and it's got some cool features. Now eventually the DJI Go app might eventually upgrade to the point that it has all the same features the Litchi app has, but for now Litchi app has some benefits. So I'm gonna get the Mavic up and running. I'm gonna put this hoodie on because it is freaking cold out here with the wind. It's pretty windy, so I'll probably get that wind warning. This will be the first time I fly since the new firmware update that supposedly was helping with cold weather flying. We'll see. I haven't tried it yet, so we'll see. I also have my new 7-inch tablet. It's a cheap $99 tablet I got on Amazon.ca. It's made by a company called N-Pole. Gets good reviews. I think it like 4.5 stars out of 5 by everybody who reviewed it. Seems like a decent, cheap, probably Chinese-made Android tablet. We'll see if that tablet can handle the cold better than my iPhone 6 Plus, which doesn't handle the cold at all. It's crap. So in cold days like this, I'll probably use the 7-inch Android tablet, and on warmer days I'll go back to my iPhone. For one thing, I have only got the Litchi app on my iPhone. I don't want to buy it again for my Android, so I'll get the Mavic set up and we'll get flying. Hey, this is the new N-Pole Android 7-inch app. Let's see how she goes. The Mavic acted a little weird there when I first tried to start it up because I think it was cold. I left it sitting outside too long before I started it. So what's going to happen now, I'll turn on the recording. And home point has been recorded, so we'll see how that works out. So as you can see there, that's the Canadian Tire Center where the Senators play hockey. It's pretty close to where I live, so I thought I'd come out here since there's a big open parking lot. So now what you do is you need to come in here. Nope, not there. What you need to do is come here, agree, and go waypoints. So I don't have any saved missions, but you can save one. You can start recording waypoints. Okay, so what you do then is you fly out. what you do is on the back with the C1 and C2 buttons, what I'm going to do is I can fly over here to this pole and select a waypoint. And fly over there. Select another waypoint, then fly over here, towards the cars there, and select another waypoint. And select another waypoint, and then finally fly back towards me and select another waypoint, and then say done. Apply. Okay, and it shows you a map of your waypoints, and then you say apply again. It was right around this point that I realized the GH4 was no longer recording. I'm not sure if that was human error or the weather. Let's just say it's the weather. Why should I take the blame, right? Anyway, it's not bad timing because I was already finished telling you how to set up the waypoints. And at this point, we're really just getting footage of the drone flying the waypoints. One thing I was impressed with was how it smoothly pans from one point to another. So if you're facing north at one point and you want to face south at the next point, it slowly turns. No jerky motion, no stutters that I could see really, and I didn't see any jello effect. So one thing I'm getting from that is the new firmware update that was supposed to help cold weather flying seems to be working. One thing I haven't mentioned is I noticed afterwards that I was set in art mode for my color scheme, which is a really unsaturated picture. So not only is it a gray day, but I think that setting made it extra gray. Not 100% sure if you know how to do the waypoints? Well, don't worry. Since my camera shut off and I wasn't sure what I got, I do a whole other example of how to set up waypoints. I'm not sure if that camera wasn't recording the whole time, but hopefully it was. So there's the corral center. In case it wasn't, let's do the waypoints one more time. So waypoints, what you do is you go here, swipe over, waypoints, start recording waypoints. My hands are freezing. Waypoint 1. And that can be waypoint 2. Then turn. And fly over here. Make that waypoint 3. And then say done, apply, and there we go. Now it's applying the waypoints. And what it'll do is it'll fly over to point number 1 by the Corral Center. Sorry, that's what we used to call it, Canadian Tire Center. It's going to fly way over there, and it's now snowing pretty good. And when it gets there, it's going to slowly pan around to the right as it heads towards the highway. Once it gets to the spot that was considered waypoint number 1. Now it's panning around to go to waypoint number 2, which is out by the highway. If you ever want to pause it too, you just hit that pause button. It's just my hands are absolutely freezing now, so I've put my gloves back on. And now it's heading to waypoint number 3, which is over sort of near me. And as it goes from one waypoint to the next, it actually slowly pans around. It doesn't snap around, it pans around, although when it went to this Canadian Tire Center, it seemed to turn pretty damn quickly. And then when you get to the end of the last point, it just stops and it hovers. Alrighty, so last test. in the snow and the cold. Let's just see, I'm gonna hit return to home, and let's see if it goes sort of close to where I took off from, which is right here beside my car. There we go. Good job, Mavic, landing exactly. Let me just bring the camera up for you. Mavic is landing pretty much exactly where I took off from, which is good. I think it's because I hovered in spot for a while before I started flying. I had time to really take pictures and analyze the ground. That's pretty slick. So, as you can see, I'm totally geared up for cold. And that's the Mavic, flying in really cold and inclement weather. It's kind of a damp cold, so it's probably colder for me than it is for the Mavic, but minus 11 still pretty damn cold. And it is pretty windy. So, I think the Mavic did pretty damn well. So we did the waypoints today, which is, the downside to the waypoints with the DJI Go app is you actually have to fly to each point and go to the elevation you want and all that. That's fine, but if you're gonna fly there, why wouldn't you just film it instead of making it go back and fly it again? The only thing I can think of is if you were flying it like on a day like today and you wanted to memorize it and save it, and it's crappy out, so you don't want to film it, but you want to log it so that when it's sunny and beautiful, you can just have that saved waypoint and you just go out, hit go, and it flies the same route. That's pretty cool, I guess. But the Litchi app is far, far superior in that you don't even fly it. You just go to a Google overview and you say, I want to fly to that corner of the parking lot, then I want to fly over to that corner of the parking lot. And at each point, not only you say what the elevation is at that point, you say exactly where you want the gimbal and the camera to be facing at each point, which is pretty damn cool. And you can do that from home without even having to come out here and freeze your butt off trying to get the waypoint set. So there you go. So far, on another interesting point, this cheap Android tablet, although it's very jittery, and I'm hoping that's because of the cold, and maybe the RC is frozen, or maybe the Android's frozen. The camera was quite jittery, but it hasn't warned me that it's dying, which is a good sign, because my iPhone in this cold temperature would have definitely been dead by now, because I've been out here for about 20 minutes. So, long and short, it seems like this is an improvement. I at least can see what's going on, and if it can last a couple of batteries worth of Mavic, that's exactly what I want. Paid $99 for it, so I don't expect it to be earth-shatteringly good. Maybe it, in the cold, the processor can't keep up with the speed of the incoming footage. Who knows? But that's an improvement over the phone, so that's good. I'll have to look at the footage to see if it's jittery, but the new firmware was supposed to help with the gimbal in cold weather, so let's hope that that works. We'll know once I go home and see the footage, and you'll see the footage, of course, when I'm done editing. And that's pretty much it. So I'll bring out more Mavic tutorials. My tutorials are going to be a little different than a lot of the people online because I'm doing it in super cold temperatures, and you know, most people are doing it in Texas or Tennessee or somewhere where it's quite mild compared to here. So if you've got a Mavic or you live in the northern United States where you're worried about flying in cold temperatures, probably I'm the channel for you, because I'll figure out what does work and what doesn't work in cold temperatures. And at least this little Android tablet seems to work fine in cold temperatures. So, one thing I want to mention, I know my channel in the summertime is predominantly sailing, and I know some of you who subscribed back then are wondering, has this turned into the Mavic Pro channel? No, it hasn't. I do use drones in almost all my episodes, my sailing episodes, and therefore drones and videography from the air is a big part of my channel. In the winter, needless to say, I can't sail, so I can't bring you fresh episodes of sailing. Although, stay tuned, in February I am going on a BVI, British Virgin Island catamaran charter with a couple of other couples, and I'll bring you lots of episodes from that. I'll bring my Mavic along, and it's going to, of course, be back to the sun and the sand and sailing. So if you like the channel for sailing, just stay tuned. Should be out early March, those episodes. And those of you who are mostly into drones, between now and then I'll be doing drone stuff, and on the sailing channel side of things, once I switch over to that, there's still going to be lots of drone stuff. So hopefully I can keep both parties happy. That's it for now. If you enjoyed it, smash the like button. If you haven't done so already, subscribe. See you next time. Bye.